Copy that, Jack. All good numbers right there. You are go to pick up in step 12.
And just to finish up there, in addition to the 2A power channel mod kit installation, the crew will also swab the outside of the space station to test for possible microorganisms as part of an ongoing investigation. And we do have views back inside the International Space Station here. On your left is NASA astronaut Chris Williams, who will be completing his first spacewalk today. And on the right of your screen, suited up, is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, who will complete her fourth spacewalk of her career today. And a few more photos taking place as NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway and European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adeneau continue to step through procedures ahead of today's start of the spacewalk.
Houston airlock step 18. We pulled out detox canisters 0.5.
And Jack, we had a little bit of comm dropout right there. Can you repeat those numbers again?
And I'm being made fun of for saying detox instead of medox.
All good, Jack. We'll forgive you on that one. Hey, could you repeat those numbers again? There's a bit of a comm dropout.
All right, those serial numbers were 0005, and the second serial number 0010.
All right, perfect. That's what we were expecting. Thanks, Jack. And with that comm dropout, that conveniently covered your comm, so that worked out.
Sorry, Houston, we just stepped on you. Can you repeat your last?
Nothing important right there. We were just letting you know we had that comm dropout, and we missed your ECOC call, which I'm sad for at this point. But everything's going well. Thank you.
Sure, what kind of ECOC call I was supposed to make. So what are you looking for there?
Nothing needed right there, so forget we even talked about it.
Copy.
And Jack, FYI, on the ground, we see the purge complete. We're ready for the purge valve close whenever you guys are.
Airlock purge valves are now down and locked. EMU pre-breathe, into pre-breathe clock restarted, GMT 1119.
1119, thank you.
And you're looking at a view of NASA astronaut Chris Williams suited up in his space suit ahead of today's spacewalk. Our other spacewalker today is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir, who has previously completed 3 spacewalks. Prime for assisting today is NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway, as well as European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adeneau. They recently stepped through procedures to install the MEDOX, or metal oxide canister, into both Meir and Williams' spacesuit. The MEDOX canister does remove excess carbon dioxide during spacewalks. And also on your screen there on the left, you see Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Kutsverchkov, who is the current Expedition 74 commander.
Houston, airlock 2 good manual leak checks. We're back into step 17 of 1.225. We're going to start pulling them off ETAs and put the safers on them.
Copy that, Jack. We see the same. Back to step 17. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and then one other data piece to add. Chris has had quite a bit of trouble today moving his O2 actuator from off to press. He's been able to do it on his own, but we just want to give you a heads up that it's been sticky, and it's been a little bit difficult for him to get it into that position. He's happy with it. We just want you guys to track it.
Copy that, Jack. Thanks for the added information right there. We'll track it down here as well.
And with those communications, the next procedures that NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway and European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adeneau will help step through with the crew ahead of this spacewalk is getting their SAFERs installed. The SAFER is the simplified aid for EVA rescue and would be used in the unlikely event that an astronaut were to become untethered from the space station. The SAFER would allow the crew member to safely propel them back to the space station. Sometimes you may refer to it being called the Space Jetpack. So they're working together now to get those installed onto NASA astronaut Jessica Meir's spacesuit. And once the SAFERs are successfully installed, the astronauts will move through the equipment lock portion of the airlock into the crew lock section. Now coming into view is one of those SAFERs, or simplified aid for EVA rescue. Adeneau and Hathaway continuing to work together to install the SAFER onto NASA astronaut Jessica Meir's spacesuit. This will be her 4th spacewalk of her career. And again, the primary tasks for today's spacewalk are to prepare the 2A power channel for future installation of International Space Station rollout solar arrays. Once installed, these arrays will provide additional power for the orbiting laboratory. Additionally, swabs will be taken outside of the space station to test for possible microorganisms. Adeno and Hathaway continuing to work to install that safer to Jessica Mears spacesuit. Earlier this morning, the crew worked through procedures to pre-breathe 100% oxygen in order to purge any excess nitrogen from their bodies, and then they completed their in-suit light exercise or ISLE activities. These movements help acclimate the body to the lower pressure of the spacesuit and purge excess nitrogen from their body slowly to avoid getting the bends or decompression sickness, similar to what divers on Earth can experience. Once Mears Safer is successfully installed, she will be moved into the crew lock. Inside the crew lock currently, you see on the top of your screen there is the strut bag. The strut bag is about 8 feet long. It weighs over 300 pounds and contains the pieces of the mid struts and left lower strut, which will be assembled and installed during today's spacewalk. A portion of the mod kit has already previously been installed and built during a spacewalk last May by NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers. And NASA astronaut Jessica Meir now being moved into that crew lock portion of the International Space Station by NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway, who you can see there on the bottom of your screen, as well as European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adano a little further back. Once Mir is situated inside of the airlock, they'll work to install Chris Williams' SAFER.
And Jack, Houston on 1 on here. We're watching the SAFER Dawn on here just to make sure that we're all in sync. We'd like you to verify the upper mounting pins on EV1's SAFER. Make sure that they're fully in the groove and they're locked. And Jack, if you are talking to Houston, I cannot hear you.
Happy Houston, sorry about that. Just so we're on the same page, on the SAFER, there's a pin at the top, alignment pin at the bottom, and the latch in the center. And you're asking us to check the alignment pin at the top on both sides to make sure it's seated in the rail.
Affirm, that's exactly what we're looking for. FYI, 50 seconds to a handover.
Good work.
Hathaway and Adano working to confirm that Mir's SAFER, Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, is properly installed. Again, the SAFER would be utilized in the very unlikely event that a crew member were to become tethered from the International Space Station. If that were to occur, the SAFER would enable propulsion to safely get back to the space station. And we are in a brief handover between our satellite communication system. You're looking at a live view inside Mission Control Houston. The team is currently being led by Flight Director Deanna Trujillo, who you see on your screen, as well as Tracy Dyson, who will serve as our ground IV today, communicating with our spacewalkers once the spacewalk is underway. Today's CAPCOM, or capsule communicator, is Scott Sagatti, and he'll be primed for communicating with the crew inside the International Space Station. And a view back inside
And airlock, we're back with you. Both Soph and I verified the alignment pins, both the top and bottom on the left and right side of Jessica Safer are properly seated in their tracks.
Copy that, Jack. Thanks for the check on that. Go to continue.
And
Okay, Jessica's in the airlock. We're moving to Chris is Safer.
Copy that. Moving over to Chris.
And with the confirmation that Mir Safer is installed, Hathaway now is going to work to do the same to NASA astronaut Chris Williams' spacesuit. Again, this will be Williams' first spacewalk of his career. And we are in another handover period between our satellites here. It does appear that fellow flight director Greg Whitney is here in the room with us as well, just speaking with NASA Flight Director Deanna Trujillo, who is the lead during today's spacewalk. The main tasks of today's spacewalk are to prepare the 2A power channel for future installation of International Space Station rollout solar arrays, which will provide additional power for the orbiting lab. In addition to this, there will be an ongoing science experiment sampling of the outside of the International Space Station to test for possible microorganisms. And on your screen, you are seeing NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway on the left there, continuing to work to get the SAFER installed on NASA astronaut Chris Williams' spacesuit and then move him into the crew lock. Once both Mir and Williams are inside the crew lock, depressurization procedures will begin. And we are seeing both Williams and Mir inside the crew lock now. Mir is wearing the spacesuit with the red stripe, and Williams is wearing the unmarked spacesuit today. Will be the 4th spacewalk for Jessica Meir and the 1st for Chris Williams. And if you're just joining us this morning, we are continuing to bring you live coverage ahead of the start of a spacewalk outside the International Space Station, where NASA astronauts Jessica Meir and Chris Williams will exit the station's Quest airlock to prepare the 2A power channel for future installation of International Space Station rollout solar arrays. This will be the 278th spacewalk in support of space station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades, and the very first of 2026. This will be the 4th spacewalk for Mir and the 1st for Williams. The prime task for today's spacewalkers is to complete the build and installation of a mod kit that is partially built outside the space station following a May 1st spacewalk by NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers. In addition to the mod kit build, swabs will be taken outside the International Space Station and tested for possible microorganisms as part of an ongoing science experiment.
Station, we are reviewing this config, and we'll verbalize it to you, so follow along.
Hey, Sophie, back with you on here. You came in pretty broken. Can you repeat, please?
We are starting now the tethers config check of all of the tethers.
All right, copy that. We're following along in the procedure, Sophie. Thank you.
Copy. So to start with the airlock gearing extender, this is hooked to the big hook of the waste tether, which is to the right of Chris. This is gate closed, lock, black on black.
And we copy that, Sophie.
Airline.
Both hooks on the airlock gearing extender are gate closed, locked, black on black. I say both hooks because there is an extra waist tether for the airlock.
And copy that, Sophie. That's the expected config. Our recommendation at this point, we can get the rest of the tether calls later once we do the depress on here. Our recommendation to you is to continue on in step 66 of the pre-brief procedure.
Okay, we're just assisting them a few moves with the tethers, and we'll move very soon.
Copy that. Sounds great. Thanks for all the help, Sophie.
And those communications from the ground to European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adenau continuing to step through procedures. You heard some communications about configuring tethers to make sure everything is good to go before the crew steps outside of the International Space Station for today's spacewalk.
Now going to step 66.
Copy that. Following along.
One of the next major milestones that we are looking ahead to this morning, once the hatch is closed, is depressurization of the crew lock portion of the International Space Station, bringing it down to vacuum. And here in the room in Mission Control Houston, NASA Flight Director Diana Trujillo is polling the team, go or no go, for today's spacewalk. And this is a view inside Mission Control Houston. Again, NASA Flight Director Diana Trujillo is leading the team of flight controllers here in Houston. This view back inside the International Space Station with both Mir and Hathaway, today's spacewalkers, inside the crew lock portion of the International Space Station. On the left of your screen is NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway, and on the right is European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adano. They've been primed for stepping through the procedures to get the crew suited up and ready to go for today's spacewalk. Next up, they'll be closing the hatch and depressurization will take place. And on the left of your screen, you also see the Expedition 74 Space Station Commander, Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Kuzverchkov. And Adano and Hathaway now working to get the hatch closed. And Flight Director Diana Trujillo confirms the team here on the ground is go for today's spacewalk.
All right, EVs and Houston, this is Ivy in the airlock. Step 76, which is the emergency MPEF is closed, and step 77, the node 1 vacuum access port. Gamma cap is attached, and we're ready for you guys to do 78.
All right, Jack, thank you very much. Good job with all of that. We'll go ahead and take care of the next 3 steps and the procedures. Stand by. We'll let you know when we're ready for you to proceed.
Copy. We'll stand by for you and for Jessica and Chris. The pre-read timer we have right here is 2 hours, 2 minutes. So that looks good, and time of day is 12:07, just for your essay. Currently night for another 35 minutes or so.
And on your screen, you are seeing NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway on the left, as well as European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adeneau. The hatch is now closed to the crew airlock where NASA astronauts Jessica Meir and Chris Williams, today's spacewalkers, are currently located. Depressurization will soon occur, and once that is complete, once that portion of the space station is down to vacuum or 0 pounds per square inch, they'll have the go to open up the hatch of the Quest airlock and venture outside of the International Space Station to complete work to install and build a modification kit on the 2A power channel of the International Space Station.
All right. For everybody on here, we have step 80.1 complete. FYI, for the EV crew, you are now hot mic'd on Space to Ground 1, and you are go to pick up in step 81.
81 copies.
EV2 copies.
IV copies, and we got step 81 complete. So step 82, Chris, I'd like you on the UIA to check the depress pump power switch off.
Okay, depress pump power switch is coming on the UIA.
Sorry, Chris. Check that the depress pump power is off.
All right, depress pump power is off.
Okay, so the depress pump power is off, and the next step is to verify the depress pump enable LED is on.
Depress pump enable LED is on.
Okay, that sounds good, and now we're waiting for a Houston go to move into the CrewLock depress Q card.
And Houston is go to move into the Q card. And standby 1, don't move into the Q card quite yet.
All right, I'm on the CrewLock depress Q card, and Chris on the UIA, take the depress pump power switch to on.
Standby 1 on Q card.
Standby.
IV copy, standing by.
NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway continuing to lead NASA astronauts Jessica Meir and Chris Williams through procedures this morning ahead of depressurization. This morning, depressurization will occur in a two-stage fashion. First, the crew lock will be taken down to 5 pounds per square inch of pressure, at which point depressurization will be paused to perform a systems check, and then depressurization will resume to get the crew lock all the way down to vacuum. Once at vacuum, Mir and Williams will conduct suit checks and communication checks with Mission Control Houston before they put their suits on internal battery power.
We're saying off just to differentiate in the, it's, a little bit harder to hear.
Will do. I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Airlock Houston, thanks for your patience right there. We just wanted to double check the depress pump status on here. We are now go to proceed to the Q card per step 84.
Lock copies. We're in step 84, and we're going to do the crew lock depress Q card. All right, Chris, on the UIA, switch the depress pump power switch to on.
Depress pump power switch is coming to on ON. Depress pump power switch has been switched to on.
Okay, I'm looking at my timer for the 10 seconds. Chris, now you can take the depress pump manual isolation valve to open and expect an alert tone.
Copy. Depress pump man ISO valve coming to open. It is open. Expect alert tone.
EV1 and EV2, monitor your CP gauge to make sure it stays below 5.5.
EV1 copies.
EV2.
And if you're just joining us this morning, we're continuing to bring you live coverage ahead of the start of a spacewalk today. This will be the first of 2026 and the 278th in support of space station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades. NASA astronauts Chris Williams and Jessica Mir are suited up and in...
My pressure is pegged at 5. My suit's very loud.
Yes, here the,
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you, Jessica.
Ivy can hear you as well. I understand that what is your CP gauge saying?
The CP gauge is above 5.
And EV2, my CP gauge is right at 5.
Keep monitoring. It says it should stay below 5.5. If it does get to 5.5, Chris, you can go ahead and stop the depress, and we'll check in with Houston.
Copy.
Again, NASA astronauts Chris Williams and Jessica Mir are inside the crew lock portion of the International Space Station that is currently undergoing depressurization, now at about 10.4 pounds per square inch. The crew lock will be taken down to 5 pounds per square inch of pressure.
Steady at 5.
Say again?
Holding steady at 5.
Copy, holding steady at 5. I'm also holding steady at 5 on my CP gauge.
We copy.
And now that the crew lock is at 5 pounds per square inch of pressure. There will be a pause for depressurization checks and system checks. Once the crew lock does reach vacuum, Jessica Meir and Chris Williams will conduct suit checks and communication checks with Mission Control Houston before they put their suits on internal battery power, which will mark the official start of today's spacewalk.
All right, as we approach 6 PSI, you guys can expect an alert tone.
TV1 copies.
TV2 copies.
Pressure inside the crew lock approaching 7 pounds per square inch. Again, we will hold once 5 pounds per square inch of pressure is reached for systems checks. Crew lock pressure now at 6.5 pounds per square inch. As you can see on your screen, NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway and European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adano continue to follow along, assisting Meir and Williams getting suited up and ready to go for today's spacewalk. Pressure inside the crew lock nearing in on 5 pounds per square inch. Again, we will pause once that pressure is 5 pounds per square inch for systems checks and communication checks.
All right, Chris, we still have a little bit to go. We're just decreasing through 300 millimeters now. When we get to 260, I'm going to have you take the pump isolation valve to close. So just a minute or two away from that.
EV2 copies and is standing by, still showing just under 5 on my CP gauge.
All right, Chris, take the depress pump manual isolation valve to close. You'll expect an alert tone.
EV2 depress pump man ISO valve is now closed.
All right, we're seeing crew lock pressure right around 260. So we're going to go into a leak check. So for both EV1 and EV2, take your display switch to status until you see leak check question mark and then a long yes. You'll follow the displayed instructions.
EV1 has leak check and long yes.
EV2 leak check and long yes.
And with the crew lock now at 5 pounds per square inch, those leak checks are underway.
EV1 leak check complete. Suit pressure 4.8. Set oxygen actuator to EVA.
And EV2 leak check complete. Suit P 4.7 and setting oxygen to EVA.
Okay, that's great news, guys. And just let me know that you both do indeed have your O2 actuator and EVA.
EV1 in work.
And we did hear confirmation of 2 good suit leak checks.
In work for EV2. And EV2 is in EVA.
Copy, EV2 is in EVA.
In work for EV1.
IV copy.
And as system checks continue, you are hearing some communications between...
Option actuator fault.
Sorry, we didn't quite copy that, EV1.
I have an oxygen actuator fault currently.
Oxygen actuator fault.
Yeah, I'm back in press now. And it's getting a little bit stuck on EVA, still working on it.
Are you saying you saw an oxygen actuator fault under DCM, or you're just having trouble moving it to EVA?
No, I did have an oxygen actuator fault, but I think that was just because it was stuck in between positions for a certain length of time. I am now in EVA.
Okay, copy. EV1 is in EVA. From IV, we just want to double check with you before we move on that you guys are happy with that configuration.
Airlock Houston, copy the calls right there. We are good with the config. Go to proceed.
Airlock copies. All right, Chris, on the UIA, take the depress pump manual isolation valve to open. You'll get an alert tone.
The depress pump man ISO valve is coming to open. Press pump man ISO valve is open.
And Sophie's going to take the emergency MPEG to open out here.
And with confirmation of good leak checks and systems checks...
Monitor your CP gauge. Make sure it stays less than 5.5.
EV1 copies.
EV2 copies. We'll go.
Depressurization is continuing. Once we get down to 0 pounds per square inch, we'll be considered at vacuum. We'll get the go to open up the hatch. But just prior to that, suits will be turned on to internal battery power, which will mark the official start of today's spacewalk. Pressure inside the crew lock now 4.5 pounds per square inch. Now under 4 pounds of pressure per square inch inside the crew lock. Pressure inside the crew lock now approaching 2.75 pounds per square inch. NASA astronauts Jessica Meir and Chris Williams are isolated in the crew lock section of the Quest airlock in preparation for the start of the 278th spacewalk in support of space station maintenance, assembly, and upgrades.
EV2 showing airlock P1.9 on my DCM.
EV2 from airlock, we're seeing about 2 psi out here, so you can take the depress pump manual isolation valve to close.
EV2, depress pump man ISO valve is closed.
Copy that, and on the UIA, switch the depress pump power to off.
All right, on the UIA, depress pump power is coming to off OFF.
Copy OFF. And it's been great seeing you guys up out there. Good luck out there. Take care of business, and we will pass you over to Ground IV in Houston.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Sophie. Hello, Houston.
Hey, Jessica, Chris. Great to hear your voice. Jack, Sophie, nice work. Thanks a lot. We are ready for your initial tether config when you're ready.
All right, TC, it's great to hear your voice as well. I will give you our setup. I will start with my right D-ring extender. I see my red hook is on my right D-ring extender, gate closed and sliders locked. My waist tether is also gate closed, slider locked on that same right D-ring extender. A large hook of my waist tether is just on my mini workstation, as is my anchor hook. And I'm looking at my green reel. It is currently unlocked. I can see my yellow. I can see EV2s. Okay. I can see my yellow hook is on the green reel. That's gate closed and sliders locked. You can see my red reel is unlocked. It has the green hook on it, which is unlocked. It also has Chris's anchor hook, which is locked. And that's also on my red reel, as mentioned. I can see the extra waist tether that we have on the airlock D-ring extender. Gate closed, sliders locked. The big end is just freely floating. And then I see Chris's waist tether. I believe that is his right waist tether.
Stay firm.
And is gate closed, sliders locked. Can actually see it all the way to him.
Hand over.
It is on his right D-ring.
And we are in a handover between our satellites currently, but will regain communication and video of the crew here shortly. You did hear communications with NASA astronaut Jessica Meir and Chris Williams as they work with the ground to make sure that all of their tethers are configured as they should be before they step outside the space station to begin today's spacewalk.
My green reel is unlocked. On my green reel, I have my yellow hook, gate closed, black on black, locked. And on my red reel, I have my green hook, which is unlocked. My red reel is unlocked, and that goes to my right D-ring extender with the red hook locked, black on black, as Jessica called. On my left, on my mini workstation, I have my left waist tether, which goes to my left D-ring extender. The small hook for that is gate closed, locked, black on black.
Okay, you guys, I walked you right into a handover. So we caught most of the tether config, and I'm missing just a few checks. Let's start with you, Chris. It's mostly on you, Chris. Your the waist tether that you have to the airlock D-ring extender to your right D-ring extender. Make sure you got that hook closed and locked.
Copy. I think Jessica can see that one.
Yep, I reported both of those. It is closed and locked on his right D-ring extender and closed and locked on the airlock D-ring extender.
Okay, well, we didn't miss too much, evidently, so you guys got a great tether config.
EV1 copies.
EV2 copies.
And now closing in on 1 pound per square inch of pressure inside the crew lock.
On the depress cue card, when crew lock DPDT is about 0, you can expect a learn tone. I don't know if you got one yet.
Negative. No alert tone.
Yep, EV2 negative.
I haven't received any of the expected alert tones.
Okay, guys, we're going to hold here while we're waiting for the pressure to keep coming down. And as we pause, I'll come back to you for hatch ops.
EV1.
EV2.
And as we await pressure to reach 0 pounds per square inch or vacuum, you are hearing communications where the crew is mentioning EV1 and EV2. EV1 this morning is NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. She'll be wearing the spacesuit with the red stripes. EV2 is NASA astronaut Chris Williams, and you'll be able to identify him because he will be in the unmarked spacesuit once we get views of them after they egress the hatch. For Meir, this is the 4th spacewalk of her career, and for Williams, this will be the very first of his career. And back inside the International Space Station, on your left, you do see European Space Agency astronaut Sophie Adenau. And on the right, NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway. They have been primed to get the crew suited up and step through procedures this morning ahead of the start of today's spacewalk. Once pressure inside of the crew lock reaches 0 pounds per square inch, some system checks will occur, and then the spacesuits will be switched onto battery power, which will mark the official start of today's spacewalk. Pressure inside the crew lock now less than 1 pound per square inch, 0.93 pounds per square inch currently.